Now, the inquiry into the contaminated blood scandal's been hearing emotional testimonies from people infected with HIV and hepatitis. It's looking at how thousands of NHS patients were given tainted blood products during the 1970s and 80s. Many of those affected have now died. Our reporter, Stephen Chittenden, is at the inquiry in Westminster, joins us now. Stephen, who's the inquiry then been hearing from?
Well, we heard today first a commemoration, then from the chair of the inquiry, Sir Brian Longstaff, and also the counsel to the inquiry, Jenna Richards QC. It was an emotional day, really. The commemoration in the form of a video by people who had been affected, some of whom have subsequently died, others had lost people. We also heard that the total number of victims, infected and affected, could be more than 25,000, and hundreds of them gathered at the start of what will be a very long process indeed. Among them, Louise Cannon. In 1977, aged 23, she received a blood transfusion contaminated with hepatitis C, giving birth. And Nick Sainsbury from Hull was one of many haemophiliac children at Trelaw School in Hampshire in the 1970s. Only 10 or so of his 80 schoolmates are still alive after being treated with contaminated blood product when he says neither patient nor parental consent was given.
No, whilst I was at boarding school in particular, there was very little parental involvement at all. They were just not consulted in any way about the treatment. All they got was like a report at the end of term, as with everything else. But my parents had no involvement in the treatment at all whilst I was away at school.
And so this is a particular term of reference that you're very keen to see explored, is it? This idea of consent?
Well, yes, because I think that the school was picked out to be used as a testing ground for these new products, and we've actually found evidence that the school doctor objected to them using it in case previously untracked patients contracted hepatitis C, but he was overruled and the stuff was used there with devastating consequences.
Well, this is something which everyone is hoping will come out in the inquiry. There's a lot of unknowns around at the moment. Your story, Louise, is a little different. You went into hospital age 23 to have a baby at Addenbrooke's in Cambridge.
Yes.
And I think, was it food poisoning? You needed it. Well, they told you were to have a blood transfusion. Did you give your consent for that?
Oh, absolutely not. I actually didn't need the blood at all. I was a very young, fit and healthy young lady, and I didn't have that transfusion until days after actually having my daughter, my baby, and I was given the blood. I didn't actually want it, but they insisted.
Infected with hepatitis C.
And I was covered in hives, and they still insisted that I had to have 2 bags of this blood. And I'd had food poisoning in the hospital. But anyway, they gave me the blood, and I didn't know that I had contracted hepatitis C. I was 23 years old.
When did you find out?
When I was 50 years old. So it's been 41 years.
You're now in your 60s?
I'm in 66 now. And it's been a long road.
And the treatment for hepatitis C is not easy.
The treatment that I had to have, which was interferon and ribavirin tablets, I had 6 months of it. I lived on my own at the time during a divorce. And so I had 6 months of the treatment, which didn't work. Then it's 6 months off. Then, of course, they weren't going to give me the treatment because I was 50 years old, and they said I'd probably be too old. But if I hadn't had the treatment, I would have probably died within a year or two.
Well, that's a thing that Sir Brian pointed out, that even since the inquiry was announced, some people affected have died.
Yeah.
Thousands have died since the start of this. People call it a scandal, don't they? The inquiry will take a long time. That has become clear. But what do you want from this inquiry?
I want my dignity back. That's one thing, the way I've been treated. But of course, I'd like justice for myself and for all of us. I would like the people that perhaps need to be brought to justice to have to face that.
That report there from Stephen Chittenden. It's 5:22.